of something that you want to stay in. And, having a network of women to talk through different issues with a non-judgment zone and getting some great coaching at the same time, and developing great friendships. So something that we're going to be bringing to Stripes in the next month. So stay tuned for details. And again, if you ever want to contact us for suggestions, here is our website and my email address. And now, because I don't want to take any time away from our speakers, here is Liv and Michael with 49 Financial.
Thank you so much, Lisa. Well, I am super thankful for meeting you. And funny enough, one of the speakers, your keynote speakers, Doug, was how I got connected to Lisa. And so talk about the power of connection, talk about building community around different entrepreneurs, different community groups. That is huge. And so super excited to get to be here today with Michael French. We'll do some personal and professional backgrounds as we get started in our deck. So let me pull it up real quick so that y'all can see it real quick. All right. Okay, give me a thumbs up if you can see it. All right, let's go to the very beginning, if that's possible. All right, well, thank you guys for attending. I know that some of you guys are moms, you got kids to pick up and tend to. You guys are also working, whether it's part-time or full-time. And so we've got people all over the coast. Thank you so much for making time today. And the goal of this webinar is to talk about women in wealth and well-being. And so to set the stage, Michael and I actually did one of these webinars several months ago. And really the why behind this is when I always thought about well-being, I thought a lot about health. I'm a big fitness junkie. I teach cycle on the side. And so when I thought about being just whole and well, I thought a lot about eating well. I thought about what goes into my body, what goes onto my face in terms of facial products, what I'm doing in terms of just aerobic fitness. And I'll share more about my story to becoming a financial planner. But being financial healthy is something that should be a priority for all of you guys. And so wanted to make it a very long title because I think that there's merit to it in terms of y'all make money, y'all have families, y'all have passions and dreams in your life. What does it look like to achieve financial wellness? And so wanted to do a quick background of me, and then Michael would love for you to do a quick background of yourself as well. But I'm actually not from the West Coast. I am standing in beautiful Los Angeles, California right now. But I was actually born in Boston, Massachusetts, grew up in New Jersey. I don't know if any of y'all have been to New Jersey before. But what originally took me out to the West Coast, specifically Portland, Oregon, was my father. And you can see him on the right-hand side. He says he looks so dorky, but he was kind of a big deal. He made it on the Grammys as one of the commercials for one of the top cardiac programs in the country. And so when I was 10 years old, that was when my dad had the opportunity to launch the first open heart team out for Kaiser Permanente in Portland, Oregon. And just like a 10-year-old, all I asked was, Daddy, does that mean I'm going to have more time to spend with you? Which, I mean, in hindsight, yes, when he worked in New York, he worked crazy hours. But in Oregon, he also worked really hard. And I think just watching my dad be so passionate about what he does, and my mother, who was an obstetrician gynecologist, now works nonprofit in the medical field, I just realized I wanted a job where I was as passionate as they are in what they do each and every single day. And so never did I think I would go into finance. I actually thought I was going to be a school teacher On the bottom right-hand corner, you can see a picture of me reading to a bunch of first graders. That was the goal, to become a first grade elementary school teacher. A fun fact about me is I'm a self-published author. I started writing children's books about individuals with disabilities when I was in middle school. And so getting to go into classrooms and be able to promote not only disability awareness, but also just education behind each and every one of us are different. And we have different things that we can offer. That was a turning point for me in being like, okay, maybe that's where my passion is. And so fast forward to college, I started getting into financial literacy. I feel like there's a lack of financial literacy in our country, let alone in this world. And as I started to learn more things in a personal financial literacy course, it was 1 hour, once a week, completely elective, not even required in school curriculum. It made me realize what really needed to be prioritized. And so that's what brought me to 49 Financial. I'll share more about the firm later. But really what brought me in was the values. I wanted to get to do work with people that aligned with me from a value standpoint, and that could build a team around serving clients with those values. And so as I built my career, I really wanted to build it around women in healthcare. And as I've continued to grow my practice, also single women in healthcare as well, because of the different opportunities to be able to be a thought partner and create clarity in this group's life. And so you can see my mission statement on the bottom. It is to bring a new standard of care for women in healthcare. And I love getting to kind of take what my parents do in the medical field and get to serve people in the gifts and passions that I feel like I'm gifted in. And so that's a little bit about me. The last picture in the center holds relevance because next week I'm going back to my alma mater in Fort Worth, Texas to do another TCU Woman in Business event. But our industry is dying. You look at the average age of an advisor, they're in their 50s. And so as a lot of their clients get older and get ready for retirement, there's actually a problem with the fact that the advisors are also retiring soon. And so I am really passionate about not only bringing new advisors into the business, but also female advisors, because I think that there is a unique opportunity there. And so that's a little bit about me. Michael French, he is amazing. He'll get to share more about himself professionally. He serves as our Senior Vice President at 49 Financial when it comes to investments. And so as we describe financial planning, investments is a very important piece to it, but it's not the whole piece. And so he doesn't get to be in a lot of client meetings talking to clients, but he is the wizard behind the curtain, and we are so thankful to have him. So Michael, I'll pass it off to you to do a quick background of you.
Well, thank you, Liv. I am, I guess, the wizard. I had never been called the wizard before, but it's a good introduction. I'll put that on my title from now on. Like Liv said, my role really is to make sure that our advisors have the tools and are equipped to do what they need when they serve their clients. So prior to coming to 49, I've been here now a couple of years. I was the chief investment officer at a wealth management firm. And what we did there was we just built portfolios and tried to get the highest risk-adjusted returns that we could. Never really knew what people's financial objectives were necessarily, just understood what their tolerance for risk was. And what I really love about what we do here is that we are helping people reach their goals in ways that are unique. And so when Liv asked for some pictures of my family, I sent them to her. And so since we live in Texas, dancing in the rain is a thing. We just don't see it that often. So that's my daughter, Hannah, and my wife, Sarah. We've been married for 22 years. And what is really, one of the reasons I'm really passionate about financial planning is because sometimes unexpected events happen. And Hannah is one of the greatest joys and most unexpected joys in our life. And to be honest, it totally changed my perspective on financial planning, because up until that point, I was like, hey, we've got two kids. My daughter's 18, my son's 16. Plan for them to go to college. Then we figure out what's going to happen next in life. And one day Sarah comes in and says, hey, and the world changed, and it's better, but it changes. And so we all go through life events, whether it's divorce or marriage, or oops, there's an unexpected child, or there's something that we're not excited about that happens. It can be death, it can be anything. And so we want to be in a place where we're like, hey, do I have a plan that will get me through what I can expect to happen, but also through things that may not really be on my radar. And so thank you, Liv, for having me here. My fun fact is I used to have a boss who was a Nobel laureate, so I never got to talk in my old job. So I'm excited, and I have like 20 years worth of words I'm going to use today, not all here.
You're funny, Michael. If I could bring you into every single one of my client meetings, I would. I describe him as the geek behind the curtain or the wizard, but Michael does have a gift of using analogies to really simplify what I feel like people make very complex, which is finances. So thank you, Michael. All right, well, let's go into this webinar. I wanted to start with some statistics. Because we're all women here, minus Michael. And so in terms of getting to share some of these statistics, when I go to the next slide, I want you to ask yourself the question, do I fall into one of these stats? Is this something that resonates or relates to me? Maybe we can do like one of those like hand raises if one of these relates to you. If someone was an athlete in the 2021 Olympics, you do have to turn your camera on and let me know, because that is pretty exciting. Us millennials and Gen Z, we need to take a selfie to show that it happened. But this should be encouraging to you guys. I mean, even connecting with Lisa, gosh, she has such a phenomenal story, and getting to hear her passion to build Stripes is incredible. And so when you see the stat on the bottom with woman-owned businesses in the US, degree earners, education, really wanting to better ourselves and create something for ourselves and our loved ones, it's awesome. And so with women's power growing, so are their assets. Let's take a look at a couple of these statistics. I mean, one that stood out to me was the third one in terms of setting to inherit the majority of $30 trillion in intergenerational wealth in the US. This is big money here. And when you think about big money, I know when I asked Lisa, what are some of the things that I should talk about? Taxes. The thing about living in the US, really let alone anywhere, is there is a tax component to the income that you make, the money that you have, whether it's going in or out. So that is something we're going to talk about. Michael, are there any stats here that really stood out to you when you first saw this?
Yeah, I think it's interesting. Something that we've studied is the fact that as people begin to make financial decisions later in life, they frequently turn to their oldest daughter to help with those decisions. And so whether it's you making decisions for yourself or even you making decisions for parents, it's really important to be financially literate and to be educated, just because you are at some level probably going to make decisions either for yourself or for aging parents. And I'm kind of in that place where my parents ask questions. My sister's a school teacher, but she happens to live in the same town that they live in, up near Nashville. And so they naturally turn to her, and she always reminds them that they have a son who's done this for 30 years. They could ask him instead, but she is the first person that they turn to.
It's interesting. All right, so in all this, there are still a number of challenges. So as you read these line by line, maybe if someone's brave, I would love to hear if someone resonates with one of these. And if not, that's okay too. So I think for me, what really stood out, and I know Michael, you want to talk about one of the statistics, but for me, the one that stood out to me was the fourth one. 65% of women say finances are their top cause of stress. I feel like just having the opportunity to get to meet women all around the country and get to hear where they're at. I meet women that make six figures and have a lot of different things going on. They're as busy as can be, and still finances are as stressful as folks that are still just trying to live day to day and figure out, how am I allocating my different investments? And so as we look back at the statistics on woman power growing, I think that there would be less cause for stress. And so this is where I'm super passionate about. I know what it feels like to be stressed. I just took a huge exam this morning, and that anxiety is real. But many women feel that way about their finances. And so that is why I love what I get to do in just meeting individuals where they're at instead of where they aren't, and seeing how can we make this not their top cause of stress. Michael, what stands out to you on this one?
Well, Lisa grabbed mine. 69% of women don't consider themselves investors. And yet study after study will tell us that women who have self-directed investment processes outperform men. They're more cautious, they're more tenacious, they do more research, and have higher returns and lower volatility, which is why I'm with Liv. I actually have a financial advisor. She is a woman. She's somebody that my wife can talk to, but that's not the main reason. It's because she's somebody who's thoughtful, doesn't get ahead of herself, doesn't think she knows something that she doesn't. So the fact that 69% of women don't consider themselves investors just shocks me, because I'm like, statistically, you do a better job than male counterparts.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, one thing that I did before coming into this webinar was asking Lisa a little bit more about y'all's jobs. And I know that not everyone is a woman in med tech here, but some of the things that we talk about when we get to take folks through a client process is just understanding where they're coming from, what their income looks like, whether they're W-2 or 1099. I'm 1099, so I get it. There's a variability where it's like, okay, how do I feel peace about knowing I am good to go now and in the future, while having more kind of variable income coming in here and there. If you guys have kids, I don't know if you've thought about 529s or UGMAs or UTMAs or brokerage accounts, which ones should I choose? That is where we get to talk through, and really, I'll tell you on the front end, there's no right or wrong answer. It depends on every single person's situation. But with education being at the cost that it is, and usually increasing higher than inflation, that is something that we always want to bring up, because your kids are your gifts, right? Taxes, goodness gracious, when you make a level of income where in terms of tax diversification, it gets trickier. What are different ways that we get to talk through in terms of figuring out how do I become diversified in my retirement? And we'll talk more about that later in this presentation. Medical events. This is a big thing. My parents are both in healthcare. I kind of grew up secondhand hearing stories. I mean, obviously with my dad being a heart surgeon, I heard more of the extremities. I hope that that does not apply to many of you guys, but thinking through what are proactive things we can think through when it comes to medical events. And if I want to retire early and Medicare doesn't kick in until 65, what are the supplements and how do we serve there? Those are things we talk about. And then lastly, if you guys travel a lot for work, I get it. I'm going to Fort Worth next week. I'm going to Oregon the following week. It's sometimes hard to also prioritize internally, what am I doing for fun when I go travel? And what am I doing for a work business trip? And so the way that we view priorities is through different types of buckets with different types of purpose statements. And I'll tell you, I always love talking about the fun bucket with my clients because they've worked really hard to get to where they are today, and their future should also involve fun things such as travel, vacations, maybe starting a new business or venture. And so these are some of the things we talk about. Obviously, every single individual is different, but creating clarity amid these different priorities is super important. And so in terms of what we'll be talking through today, I'll get us started with the importance in financial planning. I'm kind of the financial planning group of 49 Financial. Michael spearheads the investments piece. And so I'd love for Michael to talk more about what is our investment philosophy here at 49. How should we think about investing as where we are today and then for the future? And then lastly, a little touch on is why is it important to diversify in terms of taxes, and how does that play out into a distribution plan? And so before I keep going, I want to push pause. Any questions, any comments? Want to make this engaging, and I know it's late out on the East Coast. All righty, well, we will keep going. This is a beautiful picture. I'm going to see if anyone knows where this beautiful picture is. You know a little bit about my background, so maybe you know the location.
New Jersey.
New Jersey. I bet Jersey has pretty sunsets, but not as pretty as this one. And it's not California either. Oh, Leilani knows. She lived in Oregon. Oregon coast, spot on. My family has a beach house out in the Oregon coast, specifically Cape Kiwanda. And goodness gracious, this house is a gift to our family, to our friends, to the people that Airbnb it. It is gorgeous. One thing I will say is that the Oregon beaches are not like California beaches. The first time I moved out there, the first time we went to the beach house, I brought my bikini, I brought my flip-flops, and it was freezing cold and rainy. So don't do that if you ever visit. But the reason why I wanted to show this picture that I took the last time I was at the Oregon coast was because I live in a suburb right outside of Portland. And so, I don't know, it takes about an hour and a half, maybe 2 hours with traffic to get out here. And Michael knows this. He might be smirking, but we can't have it all. We have our weaknesses. My weakness is a sense of direction. It is crazy. I just don't know where my north, my east, my south. Sometimes now it's easier with knowing where the ocean is. I can be like, okay, the ocean is here. Help me spatially aware myself. But everywhere I go, whether it's just driving home, driving to work, driving to the grocery store, I like having my GPS. And we've had this beach house for 12 years. Every single year I've gone multiple times in a year, I need to grab my GPS. And there is that level of comfort in knowing, okay, I'm right outside of Portland, I'm going to the Oregon coast, and I've got my GPS. And it's telling me where I'm going. It's telling me when I'm going to get there, if there's any traffic, what's going to hold me back. And then the destination is actually where I'm supposed to go. I'm not going an hour and a half in the wrong direction, which has happened before, another trip, but another story as well. What's even better about getting to drive to the Oregon coast is having a passenger, having a buddy with me, whether it's my mom, we're going on a fun mother-daughter vacation, whether it's just with a group of friends, getting to be with me, talk with me, make sure they're with me when it starts to pour down rain, classic Oregon. And so the reason why I like to bring this up is because as a financial planner, it is so important to understand where our clients are trying to go. And quite frankly, there are some clients that are amazing. They'll tell me XYZ, this is what I want to retire at this age. This is how much I want. This is how I want to leave a legacy. That is amazing. It makes my job easy. But then other times it's an opportunity to build a relationship with them because they haven't really sat down and thought about, okay, what are my goals when it comes to approaching retirement or starting that business or making sure my kids are funded for education. And so having a plan, understanding your time horizon, and making sure that we're tracking is a big part of my role. Now, Michael, you know my sense of direction. You better not continue to at me with that, but anything to add with this analogy as we continue to go into investments and our investment philosophy at 49?
Yeah, I think it's really key, Liv, because one of the things that we do a lot with clients is as we work through, and we're going to go through some math for retirement. Like, what does it mean? What should I be targeting? Where should I expect to be when I'm in my 40s, 50s, as I approach retirement? And then one of the key things that we always ask is, well, what is in the math? What is the rate of return that I would need to earn over a long period of time to get to where I need to go? And so there's a level of distraction that comes when people start paying attention to everything else around them instead of thinking about where they want to go. And so if you were, for instance, in Austin, Texas, where I live, and you wanted to go to Dallas, Texas, you might plan for a 3-hour drive. And if I was headed north with my son and, an hour and 20 minutes into it, we're riding through Waco, we're 10 minutes ahead of schedule. If somebody goes by us at 110 miles an hour because he's 16, he's going to go, catch him, Dad, hit it. And the reality is like, hey, I don't know why those people are driving 110 miles an hour. I don't know if they're robbing a bank, if they're the cops chasing the robbers. I don't know if it's somebody on the way to the hospital to deliver a baby or somebody on the way to the hospital to help with a medical emergency. All I know is that we're on pace. And so why would I deviate from my plan? Why would I simply be distracted by what's going on around me? And so one of the things I love about this analogy is if you have a plan and you're on plan and you're on course, then it's really comforting because you don't have to worry about all the noise in the markets. Because everybody who wants to know what I think the Federal Reserve is going to do with interest rates next year, I don't have a magic 8-ball. It's really hard to plan. I know how an increase or decrease would affect your plan, and we're planning for that. But knowing that you're on course is really the most important thing, and it gives you the most comfort. So I love it, Liv. And also, I will never get in a car with you without having my phone fully charged. Just saying.
Do you guys remember when there wasn't maps on the iPhone? I had my Garmin GPS.
Yeah.
I still remember to this day when that Garmin GPS died on me, I was in the mountains with my brothers and I was freaking out. I was like, how am I going to get them home?
You never had I don't know if you ever printed out maps on MapQuest or got to use like a map where you were on page 36 and it, crossed over and it said, now turn to 67, page 67, and you'd flip to 67 and you'd go there. But
that's out of my generation, Michael. I don't know.
Yeah.
I think that would confuse me more.
Yeah. No. I'm convinced that you should have to do that since you passed your Series 65. I'm going to
come on
ask
now.
you, to navigate using a Rand McNally map book just to see if you can.
I'll put it on my list of 101 goals. It's going to be on the very bottom of them. All righty, Michael, this is still you. If you could talk through kind of, okay, investments is obviously a piece of the full financial plan. How do we view that here at 49?
The fact that Stacy got pulled over by Homeland Security trying to get in.
Oh my gosh, no.
That was MapQuest for you back in the day. Yeah. So, one of the things when we think about goals, and we're going to talk about this, like what is a realistic goal? How much do I even need for retirement? Because I think sometimes people are like, oh, I need $1 million. I need $500,000. I need something, but I'm not sure what it is. Setting goals is really important. And we want to walk today through the math of setting goals because math is really comforting because it gives you a sense of, okay, there's a realistic methodology that we can use to establish what we need to do to get to where we need to be. And then the second thing we want to do is measure the risk associated with achieving that goal. So a lot of times when you think about risk, people they think about risk tolerance, and they are like, well, I guess risk tolerance is how much volatility or up and down can I take in a portfolio? And because I have a teenage daughter who, for some reason, loves roller coasters, I've gotten used to, over the years, going to amusement parks with my daughter. And as we stand in line approaching the horror that is going to make us feel sick and nauseous, I always look at the bottom of the roller coaster to make sure that there's nobody falling out of the roller coaster. Because my theory is I'll get on because I love her as long as I'm going to make it through the ride. And a lot of people get into portfolios when things are shooting up and doing really well, and then they get back out as soon as things start to go badly. And statistically, what we know is that when you get in and you get out and you follow your emotions, you usually underperform what you would have achieved if you simply were invested in something that didn't keep you awake at night. So we think about risk, and we think about it, we measure three different elements. The first one is, how much do I need to earn? What's the risk necessity that I have? And then associated with that is going to be an amount of volatility. What's my tolerance for that? I always characterize these two things as appeal and experience. The appeal is the returns I'm going to earn. The experience is actually owning the portfolio. So the appeal is, wow, that house looks great on Zillow. The experience is, oh, the AC broke in my house. I wish I had known that it was 20 years old when I bought this house. That's the experience. And so risk necessity, risk tolerance, those kind of are connected. And what Live and financial planners do really well is they expand your risk capacity. They help you think through, well, what if I was not able to retire at 65, but I had to wait till 67? Or what if I got to 65 and I had more money than I intended to? Would I want to still wait till I'm 65? That's just retirement. Or wait a minute, what if I need custodial care late in life? Do I want to pay for that with a long-term care policy? Do I want to use my own assets, which then becomes my problem? Or do I want to use my housing equity? And so when you have the capacity, you have essentially said, I have expanded that future target. In other words, I don't have to retire at 65. I'd like to retire between 62 and 67. That's capacity. And so all of those things, answers to all of those questions, impact the asset allocation decision. Because when we invest, we're trying to make sure that we are hitting each one of these targets on behalf of clients. Again, not just investing to get the right return, but investing to get the appropriate return so that you can achieve your goals. So when we think about the math of what will I need in retirement, one time I had somebody and they were like, well, I live paycheck to paycheck. I'm pretty sure I just am going to need my paycheck again. If I make $100,000, I'm going to need $100,000. What's really interesting is on the day you retire, some things change. Theoretically, the day you retire, you stop saving for retirement. So if you've been saving 10% for retirement, what happens when you retire? Well, I don't need that 10% because I'm no longer saving for retirement. My taxes change. A lot of people actually experience a change in expenditures. Initially, sometimes they go up because we're all going to head out and do those things that we've always wanted to do but never done. But eventually, at a steady state, expenses are actually lower in retirement, believe it or not. Another thing that's a common misperception is I'm going to pay my house off, then I'll have no housing expenses. Housing becomes or continues to be one of the highest percentages of expenses as you age. And so when we think about this, look and find kind of where you think you might be in a pre-retirement income. And let's say that you're at $150,000. On the day you retire, you're making $150,000. And then you retire and you realize, okay, well, 20% of that money that I had, I no longer need. It was going to save for retirement. It was going to taxes. It was going to everything else. So now I've taken the 150, I've shrunk it, I need 120. Of that 120, about a third will come from Social Security benefits. And we're going to talk about how to think about claiming those benefits and how that impacts it. But then the other 2/3, I'm going to say, well, I'm going to need to provide that for myself. And you notice that as you move to the left, Social Security provides more and more of your income if you are in a lower income bracket. So if you make $50,000, for instance, those numbers are almost exactly reversed, where 2/3 of the money you're going to need, it's going to come from Social Security, and you're only going to have to provide for a third of your own income. And so this is just really good because it gives you a mental framework to say, hey, as a starting point, where do I need to be on the day that I retire? Now that's great, except on the day you retire, you don't need $120,000. You actually need a multiple of that because you're going to live for many years. And so a lot of people are going to say, okay, well then what do I need to be at today? What is the milestone, the checkpoint that I would want to be at today? So on the next slide, we've broken it down and we said, okay, and this is something that Liv should do as she's driving to the Oregon coast. I'm an hour into it. I should be about a third of the way there. Oh my goodness, I just passed Seattle. Hey, Liv, you're headed the wrong way. Turn around, right? And so when we think about checkpoints, this is really key. Now let's go back to the guy who, let's say, he made $150,000 or she was making $150,000 and she's 40 years old. Okay, that means that she would need 3.3 times that salary in order to be on pace to save for retirement. This is assuming that she's going to continue to save at 10%. This assumes that there's going to be a growth in her portfolio, that it's going to be a diversified portfolio, that inflation is going to be happening, and that she's going to retire when she's 65. Okay, change that and say, hey, actually, I'm closer to 50. Okay, $150,000 at age 50. I need about 6 times that savings rate. If I'm only adjusting that, that's how this chart works. If you look and you say, hey, I make $100,000 and I'm 60 years old, then you need about $700,000 saved in order to retire at 65. And going back to that previous chart, be able to live the life that you would live on that, with that reduced salary. Now, what's really key here is these are just checkpoints, and it doesn't mean, well, if I'm not there, abandon hope, all ye who enter here. Again, this is what Liv does. She sits in rooms with people and she's like, okay, so let's say that you're 50 years old, you make $125,000, you should be at 5.5 times, but you're not. Let's look at what catching up would look like. Let's look what other strategies look like. Let's look at the impact of working an extra 3 years. And so all of this is just math that allows us to say, okay, now I'm back on track. Because, in my case, it was pretty evident that I'm on track. I've got 529 plans set up for the kids. And then one day there's just another kid. Well, your plans kind of change. You're like, well, I might need to save another $250,000 for another child to go to school. And so everything changes, and you want to be able to say, okay, press the brakes. Let's look at where we are. Let's go through the checkpoints and let's see how we get back to where we need to be. So Liv, I know these are the things that I think a lot of people are like, oh, that's really interesting. I didn't know where I was. For some people, this causes a lot of angst because we're like, oh no, I'm not where I should be. That's my best friend. He and I walked through this the other day and he was like, what? Seriously? French, you're the worst financial advisor ever. How would you let me get in my position? I'm like, it's not my fault you buy so many shoes. He really does. And yet, he was like, wow, this is terrible. But he also recognized immediately, oh, here's the path to get back on track. So is there anything about this, Liv, that when you look at it and you talk to clients that they usually want to dive into?
Yeah, I mean that is why part of our meeting process is literally designed to take time to slow down and show all these numbers. Because I think a caring planner is not going to tell you what you want to hear, but tell you what the reality is and where we can go from there based off of the great work that you've done. But definitely. I mean, there are conversations where they are harder because it's like, okay, based off of your goals, based off of where you want to get, the numbers are looking different. And so, what are levers that we can pull, whether it's working longer or like cutting down on the amount of shoes that we are buying or investing in a different way? How do we approach that? But this is a super helpful framework. Michael, thank you for doing that, because I think it's important to note we are not financial planners that are just trying to shoot for the greatest rate of return. As a planner, my job is to figure out what is your risk tolerance, how do you invest, all these different components, then show you these numbers and be able to recommend what makes sense based off of, number one, what you can stomach, but number two, kind of in terms of tracking a plan. If we only need a 6% rate of return to get to where we need to be, why are we shooting for a very risky investment that has potential for 10%, but also potential to fluctuate much greater? And so as we go into the next piece, obviously, when you get started in investing, there is the component of how much risk can I take? What should my portfolio look like? That is where Michael fits in. But the other component that I feel like is a miss a lot in the portfolio management world is how is my money going to be taxed? We live in a world where there are marginal tax brackets. Every extra earned dollar, I mean, the more money you make, you can move up to a new tax bracket where you are getting charged 27% instead of 25% or 22%. And so one of the things that we like to walk our clients through is not only a risk breakdown on how are they currently invested, or if they're not, kind of where they're at, but then where are all of our monies? If they're all in IRAs and 401ks, usually they're going to be heavier weighted in the income tax, which is not anything that is wrong by any means. What that means is that you guys have been doing a great job building for your retirement, maybe deferring your taxes as you are in your higher income years. But where we like to strategize is, okay, when there is no more income coming in, when I am fully retired or partly retired based off of how you define retirement, how do I make sure I have control over where I'm going to be taxed? Obviously, as Michael mentioned, we do not have a crystal ball. Our jobs would be easy, or our jobs would not be existent maybe if everyone did. But when we think about a distribution plan, when we have money taxed in all different areas, from income tax, capital gains, and that tax-free bucket, we can really pull the lever on, okay, let's pull this much out of the income tax, the IRAs and the 401ks, but just so that we're not moving up to another marginal tax bracket, let's pull some money out of that tax-free bucket. And so in terms of that tax-free bucket, not a lot of ways to contribute to it, right? Most of you guys will maybe be even phased out of even having the opportunity to contribute to something like a Roth IRA. And so that is where we get to strategize creatively through being independent, through being comprehensive. What are other ways that we can build up that tax-free bucket? And so this is a little piece of some of the things we talk about, but I know that we're getting close to our time. And so I want to go high level in talking about the value of even starting a financial planning conversation. Here at 49, we don't see portfolio management as our financial planning process. We see it as a part of it, but we don't see it as the whole picture. And so as you can see here, these are some pieces of a plan, some that would very much be applicable to you, whether it's business planning or in estate planning. And so our job is to understand, how do all the pieces fit together? And so in that, we built out 2 different types of processes. The first one is the most typical, and we call it the retirement checkup. And it is a spinoff to a doctor's checkup, because what we find in this industry is a lot of advisors just ask for blind trust. A big reason why I joined 49 is because I am super passionate about education, and people can't make their own decisions when they don't understand what's going on. And so part of our mission statement is to create community and simplify lives. We wanted to make it as simple as possible. So this process is 3 meetings with 3 people on a team. And the first meeting is kind of like when you go to the doctors and the doctor asks you what's wrong, what's hurting, what's good, what's helping, what's going on. And so this is our version of 20 questions. This is our opportunity to better understand both your qualitative and your quantitative goals. What are the assets that you have currently? What are your dreams for retirement or for your kids or for your family? This is where we get to know you. And so after the discovery meeting, the diagnosis meeting is the meeting that's my favorite. It is where we get to show the numbers that Michael talked a little bit about. How funded are we for retirement based off of taxes taken out, based off of cost of living adjustments, based off of all of these different things we factor in, but also an opportunity to just affirm you on what are you doing great? What are the areas where we might not even want to touch, but what are opportunities where we can refine and add to the great work you've done? And so that way, in our recommendation meeting, I get it, financial planning is subjective. And so this is more of an opportunity for us to simply engage with you guys and figure out, hey, here's what we would do if we were in your shoes. This is what we showed you last time in terms of warrior tracking. Here's where we feel like we can help, whether that be on the tax side, the portfolio management side, or the full one-stop shop feel. And that's a time for us to just kind of discuss, how do we want to engage and move forward? And then from then on, that's when the relationship really just starts. One of my favorite parts is getting to travel out and literally just meet folks for reviews, catch up with them personally on how life is going, but then also update them on anything's going on in the market so they're staying up to date, but hearing updates from them as well, because life is a moving target. And so while we can create a blueprint, while we can create a financial plan, obviously life is going to change. And so we want to make sure that we have routine reviews. And so before I go on to the next process, I do want to push pause here, see if anyone has any questions on this particular process. I'll check the chat too. Okay, well, one thing I'll add is a question we get a lot is, how much does it cost to go through this process? We've actually opted out of charging a fee to go through the financial planning process, because the reality is, if we get to the end of it and we don't see where we can add value, I mean, we don't think we should earn an income. And so usually it's in the recommendation meeting where we get to discuss some of the options and strategies that we have at the table, where we get to talk about fees, but we don't know until we get there. And so 2 expectations with this process is, number 1, either of us can bow out at any time if it doesn't feel like a good fit. That's why we're not charging for the process. And then the second piece is just to get the meetings on a back-to-back kind of schedule where it's happening in a 30 to 45-day window. Because I've done this process where there's a 2-month gap and all we're doing is just re-explaining information from the last meeting. And so this is the most typical process. The second process is a division that we launched at the beginning of this year as we took through clients through a specific process in the past where we realized there is a lot of complexity to their financial picture. These are for individuals who are maybe business owners or who have gotten to a level of net worth where they never signed up to be a financial planner, but they're kind of forced to manage all of these different relationships, whether it be with their estate lawyer and their CPA and their accountant, tax advisor, and multiple financial advisors. And so really the outcome or the result that we have in our industry is a family office. Pay maybe 10K a month and get the kind of family service feel, the one-stop shop. But the reality is, one thing we found at 49 is, okay, for folks within that 10 mil to 150 mil, that could do a family office, but it's really expensive. How do we meet these clients that still feel like there's so many complexities with managing relationships, streamlining communication, all these different components? And so the visual shows we kind of serve as a hub in a hub and spoke model. And we get to meet these clients where they're at because they usually have existing relationships that they may want to keep. And that is a-okay. We don't want to push relationships out. Or we have the model built out where we've got external partnerships all over the nation that work across all states, where we can really be able to simplify people's lives through getting to take them through a process where whenever they have a question about their mortgage or their financial plan or their estate, they can give Liv a call instead of trying to figure out the number to all of these different companies. And so those are our two different processes. The last place where I want to land is really what built this company, which is a simple idea. It is teamwork. We did not invent something new, but the reality is I've felt the lift in getting to serve my clients by having different individuals' expertise in different areas. And so, for example, getting to have Michael here tag team this webinar with me, I mean, he has years of experience getting to see different market cycles, get to speak to the investing component, where that's not my expertise. And that is okay, because that's where I get to fit in as the financial planner and really serve as a relationship manager and the individual in planning out someone's finances. A couple of other individuals, if you are interested in the process that I wanted to introduce you to, is Dean. Dean brought me into the business. He is a sweet mentor and coach to me. And he usually serves as the architect of a financial plan. He's taken hundreds of clients through the retirement checkup process. So getting to have other people collaborate, get creative, stay accountable as we serve all the different clients allows us to just build an all-star team around the people we have the privilege to serve. And so to land the plane, I put my contact information here. I thought I could be really savvy and make a QR code that you can scan, and that will literally take you to booking your next step if you are interested in seeing what this process looks like, learning more about how it works to see if it even makes sense for you. But Lisa, I can also send you like a link so that it's easy for them to grab if they're interested. But thank you guys all for attending. I know it's late out in the East Coast and Central Time, and so I really appreciate just having the opportunity to get to share a little bit more about what we do here at 49 and how we serve our women in financial planning.
Thank you, Liv and Michael. It was a great presentation. Just want to open it up for any questions. Great. Well, thank you guys. I want to be respectful of everyone's evening, and thank you very much. We'll have a link to this on our website, Liv.
Sounds good. All righty. Have a good
guys.
evening, everyone.
Thank you so
guys.
much.
Appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Bye.
Thank you.
Have a good night.